What up, guys? Welcome to Third Culture
Hi.
Convos. Welcome back. Missed y'all. Um, we One of the problems that we have when we start to record is that before we start to record, we start talking, and so we're right in the middle of discussions, and we talk about lots of different things, and that's
And I just
one of
I just
our.
got yelled at.
And we just got like to to be sensitive because nobody wants to get in trouble, except for some people who actually kind of enjoy getting in trouble. So the few interesting things happened this week. One of the interesting things that happened this week was I think it's really interesting. So in Sweden, a far right politician. Um, like he he goes out in front of the Turkish embassy, and he for this is not the first time he does this, but he comes out and he stages the burning of the Qur'an, and it's what's it called? It's the issues of note, things to note from this activity. Number one is that he requested police protection so that he can be allowed to do so, so that nobody would come and say, "Hey, man, don't do that." And he'll go, "Why? Watch me. I hope, and okay." So then he has his goals, right? I hope I'm I'm not gonna, either it's to offend or to attract attention or to, make a political point, which is probably the point that he's trying to make. And we'll talk about that in a second. So that was the one point. The second point was that this was like the third or fourth time that he was doing it. And I think it's tied to like Turkey and like NATO and like trying to get like Turkey to change its mind on something and things like that. And so using the Quran as the basis of that. And one of the sort of the negative, like the criticisms that come from probably Muslims, outside of the obvious, like, why are you burning our holy text? Is like, what this does is it inflames violence against Muslims, and inflames Islamophobia against Muslims living in Sweden, because like this act is only to provoke, and only to make trouble. For I mean, I guess, and this is probably what really bothers me about it, is that like in Sweden, like Muslims in Sweden, first thing, I mean, I'm sure there are like a bunch of well-off Muslims in Sweden. I'm sure there's a bunch, but like most of the ones that would probably be immigrants, when they come in, they don't come in well off. They come in because they got to leave. Like they have to leave somewhere. And so, Sweden might have an immigration program that brings them in. But then when you got like this is not exactly the most welcoming way to tell people, okay, but then that's sort of more racism, more Islamophobia. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I'll just start out. I mean, I know Sweden for a while had a very integrative type of program for immigrants to come in and become a part of society and all that, in those type of things, and some aid financially and all that kind of. And then obviously there's the classes to like learn about Swedish history, learn the Swedish language, all these type of things, get people into the workforce.
Get Swedish.
Yeah, basically. However, I think it's Malmo, if I'm correct, that particular city has been engulfed recently for the past year and a bit with like violence, and it's like mafia-based violence and like drug-based violence, and generally speaking, it keeps on the frame keeps on being pointed at the immigrant population, because typically it's said that they're the ones that are mostly a part of it.
How European of them,
right? Because there's no Swede who would be involved in this as well for money purposes. Why would they? It's very plausible. I mean, there's no denying it's very plausible that, some guy comes from whatever country and then gets them involved in drugs and all that kind of stuff. But they're not the only people involved in drugs. It's not. But the thing is, as we all know, it's the other, quote unquote, the non-whitey, quote unquote, who, if they're doing it, all the spotlight is on them. But if we talk about the white person, so the Swede that is blonde hair, blue eyed, while it's okay, again, a lot like they do it in the United States, comes from a troubled past, low income, didn't have much of a father situation, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But we'll give him a pass because of the skin color and because he's born in Sweden and because he has a history in Sweden and such ethnically and lineage and all that kind of stuff. So there's clearly a double standard. So in terms of the
clear to us
Qur'an burning, yeah, it's clear to us, and I'm sure there's people who are Swedes
like when you're in
it,
it, yeah, right? Like you're like, man, I'm just expressing my freedom of expression, and I don't understand why all these Muslims are so against freedom of expression. Maybe they should go back to their countries where they aren't free and go watch their covered women and have them all covered up.
Mm-hmm. The thing is that we have to remember that Europe went through its book burning phase. And Europe went through its Renaissance phase, quote unquote, where it threw away religion, right? All the criticisms of religion became a big deal in European history because of the fact that for so many decades and centuries, royalists, royal families especially, were tied to religion, and the British royal family still does this, where they have they say that their royal lineage is a God-given right, despite the fact I really don't think they're that much religious people anyway. And like the Brits, I think there's a study that came out recently that said the Brits are the most least religious people in the world type of thing, like the most atheist people in the world type of thing. But they still accept it because they had the Magna Carta in Britain, where they basically limited the powers of the royal family, and that separated things from how they have political influence, right? So I'm not surprised something like this would have happened in Europe, because it's been a trend for many, many decades now and hundreds of years, where Europeans have said basically, screw religion. We're going to become more secular in how we politic and how we live our lives and those type of things. So religion being the focal point of an attack doesn't surprise me.
But you know what's funny about that was, especially with this religious conversation and about something we've been talking about, because a big criticism from a sort of, let's say, I wouldn't even call it a conservative Muslim, because a liberal Muslim might say the same thing as well, or they'd go, look at them, they don't have religion, they don't have any, and so they're all fucking their sisters and fucking their brothers and doing all this shit, and look, they're all naked, they put them naked in the street. Right, so they do that, which is funny. Well, okay, why is this funny? It's because it's literally the same criticism that comes from them to Muslims. You guys keep fucking your cousins and marrying your cousins and trying to marry your cousins and shit, and then you're
it's two sides of the same coin.
It looks like everybody's trying to fuck their sister. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Malmo is where Zlatan used to play, right? That's his first club, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Just to clarify one thing.
Yeah.
When do you guys think Muslims will react differently? This is my question. We've seen this exact action and this exact reaction every single
100
time.
It's the same conversation. The freedom of expression conversation, and then every fucking time, and I've never seen it not happen this way.
That's why I'm asking, when will we see a new reaction from the Muslims, at least?
Well, I mean, it.
You want a light?
We can bring up.
You want a light?
We can bring up. We can bring up Salman Rushdie if you want, because.
Well,
from a Muslim country himself, being raised Muslim, whatever. I don't know what his religious stance is now, but I mean, he received a lot of flack for his famous book. So, and that's Muslim on Muslim hate at that point. When would Muslims react differently? To be honest with you, I don't think anytime soon. There would have to be a similar type of, I wouldn't say a rejection of religion within the Islamic world, but there would have to be a new type of criticism of religion in general within the Islamic world that would be like the beginnings of what happened in Europe when they started to fend off religion. That's when I would think that, but people are afraid to do that. Because how many Muslim countries where if you start to do that, you're pretty much on the chopping block?
Another random point, isn't like the only way to get rid of the Quran to burn it? Like, I just want to ask a random question. Forget what's going on, the context, but like the proper religious way to get rid of a Quran is to burn it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like to dispose of a Quran.
So there
like it's all ripped up. It's a copy. Like there's a thing,
mark or there's a rip in the page or something. Food fell on it or whatever.
Yeah, that's far as I know. That's
I can't. It's not legible anymore. Water fell on it. It was in the basement. The rain. It came rain. It flooded, and now the book's all like this. How am I going to handle the disposal of this book? Yes.
As far as I know, the only acceptable way is to burn it. Yeah.
So then I would like to see, the South Park creators, Stone and Parker.
Yeah.
They made that Broadway play, Book of Mormon, and then the actual Mormon church decided not to get pissed off at them, but to actually leverage the popularity of the play to dispel myths and dispel wrong notions and misconceptions about their people and their religion. I would like just once for the Muslim reaction to be like, literally, Waseem, here's the lighters, guys. You guys are doing us a favor. In fact, from our local mosque, we have 10 different copies of the Quran that we've been waiting to burn. Here you go. Take them. Do us the favor.
Yeah. It's like, just watch him. Just watch him. Because once this is the best way to deal.
Not even
it's the
watch
best
it.
way.
Tell them.
It's the best way to deal with a bully is when you take away the thing that they're hurting you over. Like you use your weakness as a shield. They can't hurt you. So if he's like, "Oh man, you're so short. You're just so short." Like what? How did you fit in your pocket or whatever? Like if you go, "Yeah, man, I'm short."
I mean, you're basically taking the power away from them.
Yeah, you take the wind out of the sails, and especially with such a, I feel it's because it's like, oh yeah, I mean, it's been like what 20, 30, 40, 50 years of like, I'm really gonna piss these guys off. Like I'm really gonna piss off these Muslims. Let's draw Muhammad, right? Like let's just fuck with them, right? Like let's do it. And usually, I mean, you brought up Salman Rushdie thing, but usually it's, and this is probably where like, I can enter the realm of crazy, is that, but it's not even crazy. It's just that like, this is where political ends are. Like any of these actions, I mean, it's not crazy that it's a politician, right? It wasn't an author, it wasn't a politician, which means totally useless, right? A totally useless person just went and like, because he's so useless, he can't even think of shit to do. And so instead of like fixing your fucking country or like building bridges, you literally are taking a lighter to your fucking problem. And like with the thing that's I find hilarious about the sort of now like the overall global West like Islamophobia, and especially on far right movements in Europe and stuff, is that dude, like you got big problems, guys. Like you have shrinking populations, and you have you have less young people than ever before, and you have a lot more old people than ever before that refuse to die, and so you have all these bunch of retirees that is going to require the economy to work so that they can be fucking retired and chill and like enjoy their lives or whatever. Like, that promise that they made, work all your life and then retire and be chill. And don't worry, the youth will take care of it. And like that, and that type of shit. The solution seems to be, man, we're going to need to get some workers up in this motherfucker. Like we need some people to come over here to do all these jobs so that our economy can keep moving. And whether they be either engineers, coders, or like cleaners and tradespeople. And so when you have these like far right politicians sowing hate by creating or by accentuating divisions within a population of human beings, then I find that fucking hilarious, because like it's a useless person doing something useless. And so any reaction that isn't just laughing at him, I feel like is like, you know, like being offended. Like as a Muslim, am I offended by him reading the Quran? Some Muslims are, probably most Muslims are. And I'm offended in the sense that his niyyah, his intention is to offend me. So fuck you. Right? Like if your intention is to fucking offend me, then go fuck yourself. But if it's therefore, but if it's like just a stupid, like a guy being like, I see how it leads to an internal conversation among Muslims, because this is what I actually had wanted to talk about, and you wanted to use this as a gateway into like talking about like the taboos that are in Islam in terms of the things that internally we want to discuss and want to talk about, and maybe, or that we don't talk about.
I have a couple of points I want to go back to at the expense of getting in trouble. Sorry ahead of time. Okay, the drawings of the Prophet Muhammad, okay, alayhi salam. So, and I'm like the least religious person in this room, so I can't believe I just did that, but I said it anyway. They exist in Islamic history too, like, but not his face, right? We know there's a history of the drawings of the Prophet, but there's from the body behind.
And no face,
but there's no face, whatever. So
there's no face,
if these things still exist from how many years back, hundreds of years back, that means that at some point in Islamic history, in whatever societies we're talking about, it really wasn't that big of a deal, because those would have been burned. They would have been discarded.
I mean, it could have been a big deal. Like it could have been a big deal.
If it was a big deal, we would have these stories of them being burned, and we would have stories of the name of the artist who did it and was killed in the end, if it was that big of a deal, because that's where people would go with it.
I don't know, man, because that shit doesn't last. So it's like, if it was a big deal, then they would bury it, right? Like I don't think, like, if it was a big deal and...
No, I think they would make an example of the person to be like, don't do this ever again.
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
The other point that I wanted to make in terms of relation to, and this is taboo, so we're going into taboo stuff, and I feel this is a taboo subject that people don't want to acknowledge in the Muslim world, and it's related to what you're saying, MJ, about when will Muslims react differently. What I feel like there is a lack of critical development of the mind in the Muslim world, and that's been on purpose for quite a few generations of politics. Due to a lack of sincere education, I would say, where education systems for a while have been a regurgitative type of system, where it's like, here's the information, learn it, regurgitate it back to me, you're going to pass the exam. Whereas there hasn't been like there have been Arab intellectuals, for example, or Muslim intellectuals in different languages of the Islamic world, but not enough to the point where you have a larger societal movement where there's critical thinking of religion and like, let's look at religion differently type of thing, or let's look at our politics differently, because it's just not encouraged. So I feel that's why there's a disconnect with when will Muslims react differently as well.
Last week, I don't know if you guys heard about this, all of this discussion just jogged my memory. A professor in the United States has announced plans to sue a Minnesota university following a row over her showing a painting depicting the Prophet Muhammad during a lesson on Islamic art.
Yeah.
So basically, a professor wanted to show a 14th century painting art. A professor wanted to show a 14th century painting, and what happened was she warned the students in advance that, hey, like, this is sensitive, and I know some of you are Muslim and you guys are very sensitive about all of this stuff. And the student apparently said, no, I'm not down with it. The professor showed it. She was very respectful apparently the entire time, and she said, turn around, close your eyes, go outside. But after the class, the Muslim student went and complained to the faculty that, hey, this professor is showing stuff that my religion doesn't allow. And so now the university professor has gotten in trouble for showing it. She's been fired. She's now suing the university. The student is also suing the university. And everyone is just sort of, and this ties in part, this one story ties in part the Islamic taboos, what Rashed, you were saying about, mental development and just being objective students. Let's just be students for a second and not take a side, not be a Muslim student, just be a student and let's see what's up. And even the reaction is also there that like, I don't know how you guys are so sensitive. Like the whole point of university and the whole point of primary sources and studying is to read things you don't agree with. And like the whole point is to read something, analyze it, and then decide whether you agree or disagree with it and for what reasons. That's the educational process.
That used to be the point. That used to be the point. The point right now is to babysit. That's like because it's to babysit. It's to babysit because what did the school do? The school did not take the freedom of express. It's not even a freedom of expression. The school did not say, well, this was a learning thing. Like if you can't separate your emotional behavior from the demand of objectivity, like you gotta try. Even though it's impossible, you gotta fucking try. And even the option, well, you can go outside and stick your head against the wall. Oh yeah, because it doesn't exist. Because then I'll just pretend that it doesn't exist, and that's gonna be better. Like even that option is absurd. Because and I think like you ever hear that thing like what soft times make soft people? Soft people make soft times hard. Like easy times make easy people. Easy people make hard times. Hard times make hard people. Hard people make easy times. Tough people. And I think like this, like I can't sit in the room. It's offending me by being here. Well then, you know what? Like drop the class. Don't take the class. And what do you even want in life? Like literally, like what do you actually want?
You sound like the TikTok guy. Yeah, drop the class. What do you want? Just drop the class. No one's forcing you to take it.
You little butterfly. Like, oh man, I hope nobody touches you, because then you die. Clearly, like, come on, grow some skin. Like, and that's like the inability or the coddling. It's like, I think I've heard this term, the coddling of the American mind. Like the coddling, so that no, man, you know what, you were offended and stuff. Like even offending. Like if I'm getting offended, I actually respect the person insulting me in the sense that, like even this crazy ass politician, because like I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to insult me. And so you're going to say whatever you can say to insult me because you're pissed and you're blaming me for all those reasons. But of course, that's what you're going to do. Like now even my insults have to go through a little politically correct filter so that I can make sure that my insults, like, man, this doesn't make no sense to me.
Listen, this reminds me of another taboo thing that people do, and I've been university days, for example, and like having events being organized with different student groups and like, with the Muslim student groups and stuff like that. And I remember this one specific time at Salat al-Jum'ah, before Hard House became a thing at U of T. Do you remember Waseem, when people used to have to go and pray at this little back corner of one of the science building, small little space right beside the doors leading outside to the courtyard in the back of, I can't remember the name of the building though. This is like many moons ago. And and so, but I remember they were discussing organizing some kind of event of some sort, and someone suggested a restaurant, and the person who's organized said, no, we can't go there. Why not? Because they have alcohol in the building. Okay. Are they going to be serving alcohol at the event? No, but still there's alcohol in the building. But you came from Syria on a plane. Was there alcohol on that plane? You're
but I had no choice
on that plane for 15 hours.
Don't give me this like, and this is, I think, our biggest like issue, man. It's like this idea that like this like fundamental understanding of like really basic like blocks. I need blocks. Yeah. Like it's there's no like nuance, right? Like, okay, fine, you don't, but now we can't. And so where do you want to do it then? In a place where there's like everything will be a thing. You know, I don't know how much pig products they use in making tar. I don't know. Like, do you shop at a supermarket? Like,
yeah.
Like,
do you walk right when you're going to buy your chicken and your beef? Do you walk right past the pork? It's right beside the chicken.
It's right there, man.
It's the pork's the other white meat, for Christ's sake. Let's get real here.
It's looking at it real sexy. It's
literally right there. Your chicken breast and your pork loin right beside each other.
The curves on the bacon, that never sat right. The bacon was way too curvy.
But it's funny because then you ask someone about this and they say, no, I don't want to talk about it. I just don't feel comfortable there. I'm like, okay, but at some point, don't you have to have a discussion about this? Don't we have to be more critical about this?
Well, I know, because that always shocks me, right? Like it's the thing where, okay, no, listen, just don't push me on what I believe, because and here's the something, because it's so soft that if you blow too hard, it will die and wither, right? Like, because it has nothing to hold it up. It's not held up on any principle. It's held up on what I have been fed. Right? It's held. I haven't used this thing that I'm pointing to in my head. I have not used this. I've only used the part in the ears and the part in the mouth. I regurgitate.
So I've tried to bring up this conversation a couple of times here in Pakistan, just about like guys like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and now even Saudi Arabia have opened up bars and alcohol places to sit down and have a drink. Pakistan used to have bars and closed them. 60s, 70s, they had bars and hotels and this 5-star living, and they closed them and went backwards.
Karachi was the Paris of the Indian subcontinent, for Christ's sake.
They're like, I don't believe it, but that's what I've heard. That's what my parents say.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see it over here. It looks more like modern day Beirut than modern day Paris, if you get my drift. But and what strikes me is, though, the people here are just not even ready to concede, even on like a hypothetical level. Sure, let's say we did open a couple hotels and bars. How would that work? Because in Dubai, there was, at first, they opened it to only 5-star hotels. Then they did 4-star hotels. Now it's restaurants that are attached to 4-star or plus hotels. And there's other different ways of getting about it. Even in Doha, they have different ways to get about it, different legal mechanisms and zoning permits and stuff, you know. But they're not even ready to entertain it here. They're so Muslim that like, yo, we don't even discuss this. Halas, like, this is for modern people and modern problems. And it's like, man, okay, like, do we not want modern problems at some point? Like, modern problems is not necessarily a bad thing either. I prefer modern problems than like yesterday's problems.
So clearly I'm the shit disturber here. So there's another taboo subject, and I'm not going to give details. Okay. I'm not going to give details, but we talked about this off camera by text a couple of weeks ago. And that in the historiography of Islam, the early days of Islam, there are glaring problems, but no one wants to discuss them. And I'm not going to go into it. And those who know, they know. And it's not bashing Islam as a religion at all. It's not what I'm trying to do, because that's not my goal ever. But in terms of like an open contextual debate of the early days of Islam, and then even after the death of the Prophet, alayhi salam, there are issues. There are issues that happened in early Islam that no one wants to talk about. But I feel like at some point they should be discussed. But again, that comes back down to the fact that there is no acceptable way to have critical discussions about these type of things.
I have a question, Rashed. How did you learn about, and Majid, you too, in what context did you learn about early Islamic history as you were growing up? Like, how old were you and where were you?
Academic context, university.
So you were older. You had no early Islamic education, like early Islamic history education when you were a child.
Only what I was told, only what I heard through the grapevine from like the elders.
So like nothing official, and so you were probably, and when you were in university, you were like an older. older gentlemen.
Well, I started university later than most. I started university after people would have been graduating at that age. So like I started university when I was 24.
So you learned about this around 24, 25, 26. Okay, much later.
Yeah.
Majid?
Pretty much the same answer academically. And whatever I did know, I did know was just from beforehand, was just sort of whispers and, like
so in
discussion.
I'm not surprised with Rashed, because Rashed like had a different upbringing, Toronto, Scarborough, Catholic school. You're not going to learn Islamic history. No. You grew up in Dubai, so why, like, is there not an like Islamic history education in Dubai?
Not the school I went to.
Because you went to an international school.
The school I went to from grade 7 onwards, we didn't have Islam or Arabic studies. If you were Arabic speaking, you got Islam and Arabic, 2 different subjects. If you didn't speak Arabic, you didn't get either of those 2 subjects.
Yeah.
But so I did have Islamic studies up to grade 6. So I did learn, but like those Islamic studies were more like major prophets and the story of the prophet, but not after the prophet or even during his time. It's just major highlights. He was born here, he migrated here, these people were okay, these people were horrible, that kind of thing. Yeah. It wasn't specific events or people or this happened and there was a divergent opinion. Well, it wasn't like
there won't be a critique or a discussion.
I want to flip the question to you now, Waseem, because how much of your schooling when you were young was in Saudi and how much was in Canada?
Oh, it was all like 11 years was in Saudi.
Okay, so basically your developmental years were.
It was all like grade 1 to the end.
How would have that been taught to in the academic system there?
I mean, it was a big part of it. So that's why I'm surprised by your answers, because it was a very big part of the education. Even though I went despite having gone to an English international school, so it was an English international school, there was still. It felt like it was the English international school for brown people, so not for it would be like Muslim. So it would be Muslim kids. Like most of the kids were Muslim. Like I would say 99% of the kids were Muslim, versus an international school that, let's say, would have the sons of diplomats. And so they would be like, French kids, American. There's an American school. So a lot of the parents were American. There's like that. And so they didn't get that education in those schools, but I did. And also because I'm not Pakistani and I'm Saudi, I'm Arab. So I got the Arabic education as well. The thing that you weren't allowed to see. Come with me behind the shitty wooden door.
The original recipe, yo. The original Colonel Sanders recipe.
Let's go have a sit down. Let's go have a sit down behind the curtain with the Wizard of Oz.
And it was fascinating because how that develops over 11 years.
I like the reference, Rashed. I got it. I like the reference.
What's interesting about that is how that develops over 11 years was like, I think we did early, like obviously there's stuff on like the technicalities of the religion, how to pray, how to make wudu, when to do this. I mean, even this was also very funny, how to inherit. Like, what are the inheritance rules? And all this stuff is like way beyond you as a kid. Like, you're like, oh yeah, so the guy has to get doubled at the girl because obviously the girl doesn't and then you'll be in the class, it was an all boys school. You'll be like, well, why does the girl only get half? Oh, because they don't work, man. They don't do shit. Because she doesn't, like, all of that stuff was kind of built into the, like this was not the space. And if you did critique, if you were like, I don't agree with this, I think this doesn't, like, I have a question, I don't think this makes sense, you're gonna go to the corner. Like I went to the corner once. Like I got sent to the corner because I asked too many questions. Even like in the questions about heaven, like you would ask like, okay, well, if heaven's like this, well then, like, the contradictions in the idea of heaven. You're like, wouldn't you be bored if you were just like living forever in bliss? Like, wouldn't that be boring? Like you could think of that as a kid. Like you could be like because if infinite time, then I'm just gonna run out of shit to do. Like,
so, but even still, when we're talking about, so if we're gonna go back and talk about like the early days of Islam and the politics involved with that and those type of things. For you, even still, there would have been, it wouldn't have been an academic type of base like
Absolutely
MJ
not.
and I are describing.
No, it would be like that.
It'd be the generic story that everyone's taught.
Yeah, I did that again in university. It would be the generic. It was a generic story twice. So like we did the story, and we got up to actually this was very interesting. So between like I think grade 1 and grade 6, my what I believe is that we followed a chronology where we started at the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, and that story, and that was probably like a few years of that, and then we had a few years of like the caliphs, and then the dynasties, and then that gets you pretty much as far as like I think you almost get to the Ottomans. I'm not quite sure if we got to the Ottomans. I don't think we did. Like we may have. We got maybe to the early Ottomans. We didn't even get to the late ones. And then like grade 7, I think we came in like Islam class. We go, and then we just started again. Like so, we started back at the beginning. And the beginning is
so what you're telling me?
No, not Adam and Eve. Not Adam.
The devil. Shaitan.
No, the Prophet. Not even. No. Like you started the Prophet. Like you start again at the Prophet because it's the seerah. So you're talking specifically about the Prophet, and you don't like the Adam Eve stuff. No.
There's even no discussion. Yeah. There's even no discussion about what they termed the time period of Jahiliyyah. So the period of ignorance. Pagan Arab.
That's it. That's the whole thing. It was ignorant.
So like ignorant. there is even
people
no
fuck their sisters.
About, right. Yeah. So there's even no discussion about like pre-Islamic Arabia. None whatsoever.
No, I mean other than the fact that they was polytheistic. So they were just walking around with like all these gods all over the place, and everybody just kept saying that their God was not their God. Well, would they have said no? They wouldn't have said that. Everybody was just saying that their God was God, but it was just so bad. It was just so bad. Everybody, there was so many gods everywhere. There were gods. There were statues. People worshipped statues. It was just a shit show.
The focal point was the Kaaba. It was always the focal point for even the.
Well, we don't
Arabs.
talk about that's all after.
There.
Like I never. Like all of this sort of advanced stuff. Like, I mean, even the word, this was always funny. Like even the word Shia, I had not come across that word the entire time. I remember the first time.
East Coast of Saudi is
I know
like Shia majority.
Like, yes. Like
it's not like they don't exist.
No. I mean, but the Saudi I grew up in was not like today's Saudi, right? Like
no, I know.
It wasn't the same.
Even then, though, that's the point. This is exactly it. We may sit in class, but we're not allowed to interact with our material. When it comes to this subject at any time period, today, tomorrow, yesterday, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, because the administrators might be okay with you teaching it any way you want. The teacher themselves will then take ownership of this material and say, no, you're not allowed to ask these questions. So the administrator might be okay with the students now asking, hey, we want you to ask these questions. But the teacher, the Muslim teacher, the Islamic teacher, will be like, no, these questions are not for you. This is.
He would have gotten in so much shit.
What is this philosophy?
I can't even imagine the administrative system allowing the teacher to say that.
They would have gotten in so much shit.
Today versus yesterday's Saudi. What Waseem was saying, it's not today's Saudi anymore. Even in today's, even if they allowed you to, I think that middleman will not. Something inbuilt into Muslims, that they don't want these questions being asked at any level, at any.
Yeah, and it's when you grow up, and this was the biggest, like this was a feeling, and I imagine a lot of third culture kids, I may or may not start to feel this experience. But what happened was once I left Saudi and went on to university and then met other Muslims, right? It's like it feels like you had this big like elephant that was covered in drapes that you weren't allowed to, like you didn't, like you suspected it being there, but you didn't like know anything about it, and you're
not allowed to ask it. Do you guys see the elephant? Do you also see the elephant?
Yeah, guys, what's that over there under the thing that's like taking up the entire fucking room? And so you suspect that it's there. Yeah.
It's not there.
Like, man, don't get like you talking lip. You talking smack, like, And all of that was like really interesting, because then you're like, oh shit, what else did they tell me? And then that leads, and some people, that's like a renaissance that lead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, for some people that leads to like a renaissance. It's for some people that like leads to like a close down. You're like, no. Everything I know is what I know. I don't need to know anything else anymore. And then I'm gonna just like actually like fundamentals. I'm just gonna break down to like my fundamentals, and then and that's how that happens.
Piggybacking off this, do you remember there's this really famous Egyptian news clip that goes around on Reddit every few years, where there's three guys. There's the host, there's a sheikh, Islamic like imam guy, and there's like a law student guy who's really like thin and nerdy looking. And they turn to the guy and he's like, I'm an atheist. And the host is like, what does this mean? And the guy's like, I don't believe in God. And the host, not the sheikh, the host freaks out and kicks him off the air live on TV. That like, who are these people? Where do they come from? We don't need young people with this mind frame. The devil has possessed you. Ya Allah, I'm sorry for bringing this person. I am personally sorry for bringing this person.
I would not be surprised if that was staged by the network. And the host had to go on this big tangent because we have to reaffirm belief in God.
But that is the microcosm of this entire sort of taboo discussion with Muslims, right? That you can't even pretend to have it. The gatekeeper, forget the sheikh, the gatekeeper will be the one to say, no, this question's not allowed. Not allowed.
Well, it's his show.
Like, I mean, I won't be surprised if the sheikh himself would be like,
okay. But can you imagine if he doesn't react? But even the host, if he does not react in this manner, he's going to get off the air.
Oh, that backlash would have been like,
he has to do that. Like, even if he doesn't believe it, and he doesn't like, or he can engage in the conversation, or he does, or God forbid, he does his actual fucking job and asks questions and explores, like, God forbid, no. But he has to be a part of that thing. And that's like when I talk about like taboos in Islam, and like, atheism is one of those, like either as, I mean, if you're a Christian and you become an atheist, Muslims were cool with that. We're actually really happy about that. Like, we'll be like, oh fuck yeah. Like look, I even heard a joke once. Someone said, he's like, man, like, he says, this guy, he just said there is no God, and he goes, my job is now to make him believe but Allah. I just need to add a little asterisk at the end, and then I'm good. so there's that. So we're very happy. But if it happens to a Muslim, we're not happy. We can't even have that discussion. Like, we cannot sit and have a civil discussion about that topic, because it exists in the realm of taboo. And I mean, and I guess like this was probably the first problem that one of the problems I ran into in terms of when I saw the elephant was like the logic that was given was, okay, why can't we talk about this, right? Well, and why is the punishment for being an atheist, like by leaving your Islamic faith publicly, why is the punishment like believed to be death? Like, why is it death? Like, why is this so extreme? And the answer usually is given that this like back in the day, this weakened like in the Prophet's time, a lot of people would like just come and go, and it weakened the resolve of the religion. The religion couldn't handle it, like the community couldn't handle it. And then I go, yeah, but now the community is like, what is it, like 1.5? We can stand to lose a few, right? Like it's totally. Some, I wish they would just become atheists and just fuck off. Like so, like I could name a few. And so that it didn't hold up. Like the logic of why we were doing it doesn't hold up anymore. And so you see that fallacy. But also it's like the double contradiction, because then you say, okay, fine, you know what? I'm just going to read the Quran. And then you read the Quran, and in the verse, like, you read the Quran, you say, La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. So you can't force anyone to do anything when it comes to religion. You can't force it. So then, doesn't this seem like you're forcing them to stay Muslim? Like you're forcing them to stay Muslim? Because even the act of killing them if they leave is an act of force. So like, doesn't this contradict literally the words that are written right here in the Quran? And oh man, I so got kicked out. Like you said that you can't, like, you know, like, and that's where like it leads to such, like, you could see people that get so uncomfortable, like where she has to leave the room because she can't look at it. She can't engage with that, because what it does is it'll force her to start to question her basic assumptions. I'm saying her, but it would force her to question her basic assumptions. And like, I feel like we're so, this is going to sound horrible, but we're so weak that we're so we're so weak that we can't, like, we can't handle this, because it means that we lose everything about ourselves.
See, the thing for me, the basic point that basically makes this the foundation for me is that it's basically promoting faith based on fear, not faith based on sincere belief. And for me, that's problematic, because again, if we want to go according to Islamic principles, it's pretty clear that it's like you should be understanding what you're believing.
Yeah. If you burn the Quran, I'm gonna kill you. Like, isn't that fear? Like, isn't that like? And what's so funny is that like literally, okay, so that let's call this class the second year of classes. In the first year of classes, you were just being given all this like how Muhammad alayhi salatu salam was the best person in the world, and how he behaved with people. So, and like, you know, the neighbor who threw garbage at his door every day. Did he go and throw it back at her? No. Did he go set it on fire? No. Did he go and get a mob and like, you know, camp outside her house? No. The day that he came and he saw that there was no garbage in front of him, he went and go checks on her and make sure she's all right and she isn't sick, and like he finds out she was sick. And so he comes and he checks, oh, I hope you're all right. I hope you're feeling better. And so when we talk about prophetic behavior as the example, and when we look at our behavior, and this, like, these contradictions, I feel like are obvious. Well, maybe because you guys didn't take this, but it was obvious to me in like grade 1, 2, 3, right? Like, it was obvious that the thing that they were telling us was like, in terms of like year 2, in terms of how we're supposed to behave, in terms of all these other things, had nothing to do with what they told us in year 1, and which was what is like, and I think like the point of religion is to provide an example of behavior so that you can aspire to a higher ideal, right? Like, so like, I'm not shitting on religion. I don't shit on religion. I'm like, I shit on plenty of things, but I'm not necessarily shitting on religion wholesale. I'm just, all I'm saying is that because it does provide a very important, it's very important, I think, for many people. It gives you a higher ideal to rise to say, okay, how am I supposed to behave? How am I supposed to like behave with others? Like, really, that's it. How am I supposed to behave with other people? How can I make sure that my intention is good, right? How can I make sure that I'm like questioning myself? How can I make sure this is what it does? But then they do all this other stuff. So that stands in contradiction. And you're like, oh.
Well, my shit disturbing question is, would be, do we believe these stories?
Before even that, Rashed, can we take one step back? It's really weird with these people who love these stories, because they want you to study these stories, but don't study them too closely. So like, we want you to read this stuff, but don't think about it.
So they don't want me to ask that question I just asked.
So like exactly like cut that question kind of off because like we want you to read it, but on our terms. So just a minor example, we love talking about, for example, the prophet Moses, Musa alayhi salam, but we don't want to talk about like his almost atheistic tendency of, despite speaking directly to God, he still has to question his existence and that I need to see you to believe you. So like if someone who has a direct line has these little bits of doubt, how like 3,000 years removed and no line, no direct or indirect line, why am I not allowed to have a little bit of that leeway? But no, don't have this interpretation. This is not why I told you to read this story. You read the story to understand about Pharaoh, not Prophet Moses. Like, I don't know. What do you like? I'm just saying, when I do read the stories and I have questions, you don't want to answer my question. So now what do you want from me?
I want
now
you.
we'll get the second part is
Here's
Rashed,
what I want.
thing. Like, do we even believe these stories?
Do we believe the stories? Because here's the thing. Within Christian tradition, for example, there's always these discussions. It's like, well, how do we even know these people existed in the Bible anyway? How do we know that these stories are true? And then people always look to biblical stories of prophets tend to contradict each other at times. And like even within the Gospels, the different Gospels, same story, but then like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have different accounts of it, type of thing. So, well, how do I know what Jesus actually did? So, and my question relates to a class that we did together, MJ, that you did not like this particular professor. But I remember,
Rustam.
Yes, I wasn't going to bring up names, but yes, but it was on Shiite Islam, and it was really my first introduction to really like the not the chronology of Shiism, but just like the characters of Shiite Islam. And I remember one specific question that he asked, and he's like, "Do we believe in these stories?" And he literally said right at the front of the class, he's like, "Of course we don't. These are myths. They're mythological stories because humans need a character who has done certain things that are, as Waseem was saying, good things to aspire to. That's their purpose. Their purpose is to be morally based stories. Now, did these people exist? A lot of them, yes. A lot of them, they're proven to exist because of the different accounts, not only like, let's just say Islamic accounts, but also non-Islamic accounts of like the Assyrians, for example, like Christian communities or Jewish communities, for example, that have accounts of the same people, but the stories may differ slightly, but they're talking about the same person. So then that's how, when you talk about historiography, that's how you talk about proving someone actually existed, type of thing. So yeah, I mean, it goes back to, it's all about morality. So does it really matter if that person existed or not?
I want to look at one specific thing about this example that you just gave. So the professor, a few things happen. When the professor says, "Do we really believe this?" For many people in the class, and I imagine Majid included, you when you hear that for the first time, because like you're in university now, right? Like this is where like, oh, you know everything, you know? Fuck that. You don't know shit. Like, so it's you, when you're sitting in the class and you hear that, because I remember having that moment, like my blasphemy moment, where blasphemy was said, and my reaction was to be blasphemy and expect like the worst, and then nothing happens. Right? I expect the thunderbolt. I expect it. Like I totally like I'm like, all right, oh shit, I gotta make sure I get out of the way. And maybe I'm complicit if I just sit here and listen to it in the first place.
Is there a bomb shelter here?
So that might be your first like thing. And I think it's really important today for like for people to be in those types of positions, to like, you know, hear blasphemy, so that you know that you can hear blasphemy and it's not the end of the world. Like blasphemy can exist, and it's fine. Like it's okay. Blaspheme away, buddy. Like, burn the Quran, man. Is that what you fucking want to do? Really? Is that going to make you feel better? Go fucking nuts. Like, you're an asshole. Sure. And then on the other hand, it's also when people know that something, even if it may seem necessary and it seems to them that it's necessary, but when people know that their actions are going to offend or hurt other people, and they still do it, there's a part of us that's also like asshole, like, because that's asshole behavior. When you know that this is gonna offend people, but you do it anyway, right? I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna do whatever I want. Like, I do what I want. I say what I want. I'm like, look at me, right? And maybe because it's indicative of an inflated sense of self or inflated ego, and that type of shit like doesn't sit right with like people are like, oh fuck this guy, right? So I get that too. I get both.
I mean, like in the words of a famous rapper, P. Diddy, ain't nobody gonna take my pride, ain't nobody gonna hold me down. Oh no. That's basically what they do. That's basically what they're doing. They don't care.
Well, my one problem with the Swedish guy, just to come a little bit full circle with the Swedish dude, is what Waseem said. It's almost, he's clearly doing the second. Like, he's clearly just trolling. If he had a moral position, if he had held this position that I want to burn the Quran every Friday for the next 40 years, I would still respect him a lot more than now. Now it's almost manipulative and exploitative, right? He's just using people's feelings and blending in politics, EU, NATO, Ukraine with Turkey. Like, it's a mishmash of reasonings and logic and things being thrown in there.
And he's targeting sensitivities that he knows is going to get a reaction.
Which you're trolling. Like that, the word is trolling, right? It's not
absolutely
he's not like, this has been my position from day one, and I've been doing this for years. And that's what's just annoying, I think, with the Swedish guy. But if he's a troll, that's even more reason for Muslims to just be like, God will judge you, and Bismillah, I pray for your soul.
But that's what annoys me. We know he's being a troll, but again, we go back to the reaction itself, and it's just like the reaction is so weak. Like, it's so easy to get people to react. Like that's where I think like the self-reflection has to come in at some point and say, wait a second, why are we getting so damn pissed off over this?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about like, because like, where would this, I mean, even more trolling, but I think about people like, you know, the like famous Muslim, like famous ex-Muslims, right? Like the most famous ex-Muslims. Like, I don't think it's trolling when it's coming from them. Right, like, because like they, right, like it's like, you see what I?
Oh, like Irshad Manji, the girl here in Canada, for example, like she wanted like her book and everything. It's like she was talking based on her personal experiences, and that's fine. And you know what? You need more stories like that, to be honest with you. But she got some serious flack for what she said in her book and everything. But again, because people weren't ready or willing to discuss what she discussed, what the points that she brought up, but those are discussions that need to happen within the Islamic community.
Yeah, we don't need.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't need Svensson to go and fucking tell us what we need to be talking about,
from
right?
Within. It absolutely has to be from within.
Yeah, we don't need Svensson to come fucking tell us what we need to be talking about, man. I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Svensson, I'm sorry, Svensson, but just. I don't know if his name is Svensson. I'm just fucking around like, Svensson, please just shove it up your ass, man.
I don't know, Sven Boringson. I don't know. Like whatever.
Get out of here.
At least you pronounced it correctly. They usually don't have the courtesy for that much.
They don't do that for us, huh? They don't try.
Even within this ex-Muslim crowd, by the way, for them, in their perspective, there's also they have a big problem differentiating between Muslims and Islam. Often they're so colored by their experiences with Muslims that they integrate it into Islam, and it's not it's a fair thing, but there are times where you can, like, what Islam says and what Muslim says are two very different things, and somehow we're okay with this misinterpretation.
And it's because it's influenced by culture.
That's me speaking, me living
completely
in
influenced by
Pakistan,
culture.
the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. I can tell you, like culture and religion and spirituality, these are all sort of different. They might have some, it's a family tree. They might be different branches. There might be a similar like foundation, but there's different branches.
And everyone's also. So like, I mean, in terms of hierarchy of truth, there's a our understand, like, you know, like like Islam trumps culture. So if you've got an Islam card, it's going to trump your cultural card. But because it's so difficult after like thousands of years of existence to separate, like to source where something starts, and is this a cultural phenomena or is this an Islamic phenomena?
I'll give you a good example, like an example of like older generation not wanting to discuss this. So I had a talk with years ago with my dad about this, and we're just talking about religion in general, whatever, and all that kind of stuff. And then I just brought up the point to be like, he was making the point. He's like, you were born here, and if you followed Islam and prayed 5 times a day and fasted, you'd get more hasanat than the guy living in Mecca, because you're living so far away from the source of everything.
It's harder.
It's more difficult for you to do it here than them over there. And I'm like, well, how many people don't do it there anyway? Like, let's get real here. But the thing is that, and I was getting at, but then it morphed.
So wait. If I go and pray in the middle of a strip club, do I get even more hasanat? Because I'm in the strip club?
Especially if you lower your gaze. Especially if you lower your gaze.
That's yes. Like hasanat in the bank.
Because now you've put yourself in a situation of temptation. You're like, I'm not taking any of the temptation.
Oh man.
But so then the discussion morphed into like the differences in how people follow in different parts of the world. And I'm like, really, Dad, you're going to tell me a person who's Muslim in Morocco follows the exact same way as someone in Indonesia? It's not true, because over the years, cultural aspects of the local population gets mixed into what ends up becoming religious services, but they're not religious in nature.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I'll give you a good example. Trinidad, for example. Everybody in Trinidad celebrates Diwali. Everybody. Because the migrant East Indian population that were essentially brought to Trinidad as slaves, for the reality is, they developed such a strong influence on the culture that developed in Trinidad. Certain things that came with them from the old country that are like Hindu-based became a part of the greater Trinidadian culture. Everyone in Trinidad celebrates Diwali. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, Hindu, whatever, atheist, doesn't matter. It became a cultural holiday.
One big difference living in Pakistan versus the Arab world is on Friday. After the first surah, Fatiha, I think, Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
After in the Arab world, after the Imam says that everyone says Ameen together out loud, right?
Yeah.
Like audibly, Ameen, and like Kullu Jamaat. Over here in Pakistan, no one says that. On Friday, I'm literally the only one, and it's out of habit. And I just kick out, like I could be sleeping, like mentally I could be sleeping in prayer, but I'll just say Ameen, like just wake up Ameen, and nobody here says it. It's literally me, the only one in the entire mosque.
Do you get side-eye?
No. I think they're used to. They know that, like, this guy is like clearly from.
They'll think he's one of the pure ones.
Well, it's so weird, because the way I learned how to pray from Arabs is so materially different from the way they pray here. Even the timing, when the Imam goes down, Allahu Akbar, and goes down. In the Arab world, we wait like for the Imam to go down, and then the entire follows him. Over here, they do it at the same time as the Imam. He'll say Allahu Akbar, everybody will go down, as it's almost a race. It's so weird. It's just weird for me, having grown up in like Arab worlds, to like, there's a certain way to pray, guys. Like, I've learned it.
And that was that.
Well, it's not even that. Would also confuse what I had a confused moment at one point. I'm like, wait a second, why are some people praying with their hands folded around their belly button and the others are praying with their hands down by their side? And then someone like, oh, that's a Sunni Shia thing. And I'm like, but I learned that there's some Sunnis that do that as well. Hands by the side. And I'm like, so it's not a Sunni Shia thing. It's just where'd it come from?
Well, and I see the, like, I understand the importance of ritual in like life, like that, like how you do things matter, right? Like how you move, how you breathe, how you these things actually matter. So like, you know, if you asked me this like 10 years ago, I'd be like, man, these people are just too stressed about little technical like differences, and it's all prayer, it's all good. And which still may be the case, but I also understand that for some people, it's, you know, how am I supposed to do this? Like, how am I exactly, like, should my hands go here? And the issue, all I feel like, is when you it is a feeling. So like, I don't even know if I should trust it, but if it's when you start to say that doing it that way is wrong, when you say, even though that it's totally true within their cultural history and their cultural context, to do it that way, but to say, well, no, because they're wrong. They're doing it wrong. They're doing like they're innovating. We pray the way the Prophet does, and then they will say, no. We pray the way the Prophet does. You guys are praying funny, and sometimes that, and instead of it like even just stopping there, because then even that is like a healthy place to stop. Like, no, man, we're the ones that actually follow the Prophet. Man, what are you guys talking about, man? No, we're the ones that actually follow the Prophet. That would be a nice, healthy place like to end. But when that turns into like violence, right? Like when it goes like no, okay, you know what? You know what? If you don't pray this way, and then we start getting into the compulsion and religion business, and we start getting into that area, and like you might as well like throw the book. Like, I'm sure there's a really nice metaphor for this, but you might as well just throw the book out at that point and burn it. You might as well burn the book now, because you're totally not like you've totally missed a few chapters. You've totally missed the point of a lot of it, because if you're supposed to be the ummah, and the ummah is supposed to be like, all of this stuff doesn't, and then when those things come up, everybody's in trouble. You understand?
And for a lot of people, it's really confusing. Like my sister, for example, she's been going through her little religious revival thing recently, and in her later years, and well, she's not old, but she's mid to late 40s now, and feels guilty about certain things, and now she's going through this religious revival, which is healthy to a certain extent, but she's like, Rashed, I don't know how to pray. I'm like, but our grandma taught us when we were a kid. She's like, yeah, but I forgot everything. I have no freaking idea. Like, just go watch a YouTube video, because I can explain it to her, but at the same time, it's like, it's better if you actually get a proper demonstration from someone. And she found a really good one, actually, where the demonstration actually tells you it's the full-on demonstration, and it's like Arabic but with the English lettering, and with all the different rak'at and everything. It's like,
that's so funny. It feels like imagine you know someone for like a year, but you forgot their name.
Yeah.
And you don't know their name, and like now you're like embarrassed. You have to ask them their name. like
a popular urban
that happened
legend.
to me at work. It's really funny, actually. Sorry, MJ. Sorry, I just need to say this little tidbit. So I was going into the crew room once, and I walk in and I see this pilot. He's a white dude, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Rashed, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Great, how are you?" And then I walked away, and I'm just like, "How does that white guy know my name?" He said it properly for one, and I'm like, "I don't know his name. Is it Adam? Is it Tyler? Is it Todd? Like, I don't know which one. Which I have no freaking idea. I think it's Todd. No, I think it's Adam. But whatever. That was a little whoa. This guy might be a bit more cultural than I expected.
A very popular urban legend with Muslims is, if you forget a dua, or if you forget how to pray, khalas, your ticket has been booked. The next 50 years, you can't rectify this stuff. If you've forgotten once, khalas, there's a one-way ticket, first class.
Yeah.
Well, when you go to like, again, that's what's funny.
In the main, then
you can't, because
pork.
Then you give it away, man. I mean, I haven't prayed in like 50 years, right? Like that means I haven't prayed in 50 years. Oh God. And like, you can't even, like you said, go on YouTube. You didn't say, go to the mosque and ask the sheikh.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's no way.
It'll be like, what the hell you been doing?
She asked me once, I'm thinking about going to this lecture night thing at the mosque, whatever. I'm like, oh, what's the topic about? She's like, I don't know. You don't know till you show up. And I said, I'll give you an example of when I went to one of those when I was in Manchester, going to university there for the year. I went to one of them, and the sheikh is sitting there, and it wasn't fully, it was segregated enough, but not fully segregated, I guess you can say. Like it wasn't like miles apart between the men and women, but like we're sitting in the same room and we can still see each other. I'm like, this is progressive of you. And the discussion that night was why Muslim men are allowed to have multiple wives. And and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm actually curious, because the people who brought me to this were like, this guy's actually pretty good. He has some good points about certain things. I'm like, okay, let's try this guy out. He starts, his main point was, if his current wife is not satisfying her husband's needs sexually, he's allowed to go and get another wife for that purpose. And I just sat there and I looked around the room, and everybody accepted it. And I wanted to say something, but I'm like, no, because you know what? I'm going to put my hand up and say something. And the only guy without the British accent in the damn room, who everyone probably would think is American, they'd be like, this freaking American guy, what the hell are you doing here? Then I have to correct everyone and say, I'm not American, I'm Canadian. Screw you, sons of bitches. But I'm just like, how did everyone just accept this? And so one of the people that brought me to this was a girl that I knew, this Palestinian girl from, like, her family's from Gaza, but she pretty much grew up in Manchester. And I'm like, Hannah, how do you just accept that? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's one of the lamest excuses I've heard in my life. And she's like, wait a second. Oh, you're right. You should have said something. And I'm like, but I would have been the only person, and I would have been stoned or something. Like, I mean, I would have been chastised if I said something.
Maybe other people were thinking that, but also
maybe no one had the balls to say it.
In that case, man, Muslim men are going to marry a lot because they want to marry a girl that hasn't had any sex before. And so there's no fucking like how are you going to learn how to fly a rocket ship if you've never flown a rocket ship?
You need to go to a simulator.
Right, like you can't drive manual first time. You can't drive the stick first time. You gotta learn how. You gotta learn.
You really had to bring the stick euphemism into this.
Someone's got to teach you. Yes, I did. I'm making jokes, but we're just running over time, and so I just want to say I'm in no position to give anybody any religious advice. I was initially thinking like, what kind of advice would you give to people? And so I'm in no position to give anybody any religious advice. I think the reason why we're having this conversation, an important thing, is because we're talking about taboos, and we've only touched on like a couple. I think I have a whole other list of like taboos that we touch on. And I think the only way to remove some of the negative effects that are associated with the taboos is to respectfully have conversations about them, so that in addition, so that, like, Svensson over there doesn't get under our skin, because I don't want Svensson to be bothering us. Like, Svensson is trying to bother us, but I don't want him to bother us. I want us to bother us. I'd rather us be the ones bothering each other in terms of trying to live up to the ideal, and to figure out what that ideal is, and to try to like work that shit out, and strive and jahid towards that. That's what I would rather us do than have Svensson over there telling us, because you know how white people ruin everything, like that. Even social justice fucking ruined. like it was like, that was an easy one, guys. That was an easy one. It's social justice, and even that, you guys took it too far. What the fuck? Like, even the economy, the economics of slavery, like, there was one thing, and then you decided to fuck it up for everybody. I'm just fucking around, guys. I'm just trying to end on a light note.
I'll just say, people, don't sweat the small stuff. And that's advice I give to my sister all the time when she gets stuck in her brain about certain things that she's learning from scratch at this point. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't put so much pressure on yourselves.
That convert energy, yo. That revert energy.
Take care, everybody. Lots of love. Thanks for listening to the end. And make sure you follow our social media accounts to yell at us about all the things that we said that doesn't make any sense to you.
Yes, yell at us, please. We want to be yelled at, especially me, because Turns out that I'm the
if any of this stuff resonates with you, please let us know. Thanks, guys. Have a thanks, Shabab,
Peace,
for
peace.
joining. Peace, everybody.
Yalla, yalla, yalla.